Okay, so ethical AI. It's one of those things you hear everywhere, right? But what does it actually mean?
And more importantly, why should we care?
That's exactly what we're diving into today. We've got this episode called Ethics in AI.
From the ReThynk AI Podcast.
We'll use it to unpack why this matters to everyone, even if you're not, building robots or anything.
Right, because most people don't realize ethical AI is already all around us.
Oh, like how?
Well, think about those personalized recommendations you get on Netflix. Or how about facial recognition? That's being used in security systems everywhere.
It's AI, but not in like a Terminator way, right?
Exactly. It's less about robots taking over and more about making sure this tech is actually working for us.
Not against us.
Exactly. And this ReThynk AI podcast really highlighted some of the big risks if we don't do AI responsibly.
Like what kind of risks?
Well, they talked about four main ones: reinforcing bias, causing actual harm, invading our privacy,
And
just a general lack of accountability.
okay, so let's break those down. Bias, for example. What does that look like in AI?
Imagine a hiring tool, one of those AI systems that helps companies find candidates.
Right.
Now, let's say it's trained on data that's historically favored men in certain roles, like way back in the day when it was mostly men in those jobs.
I'm seeing where you're going with this. You would just keep that bias going, right? Even if we don't mean to.
You got it. It might end up suggesting male candidates more often, even if there are equally qualified women, just because of that old skewed data.
So it's like bad data in, bad decisions out.
Exactly. Garbage in, garbage out, as they say.
Yeah.
But what's fascinating is that this bias isn't always intentional. It can happen just because of who collected the data, what questions they asked, even how they labeled things. Tiny choices, huge consequences.
Okay, yeah, that is unsettling. What about the causing harm bit? What did they mean by that?
Have you heard of deepfakes?
Like those super realistic videos, right?
Yeah.
Where it looks like someone's saying or doing something they never did.
Exactly. And that tech. Huge implications. Imagine that used for misinformation or just flat out ruining someone's reputation.
Yeah, okay, that's definitely harmful. And what was that third risk again?
Privacy.
Ah, right.
We all love our Alexa, our Google Assistant. They make life easier.
True.
But those things are always listening, which makes you wonder, where's the line between convenience and being spied on?
That's a good point. I mean, sure, it's cool that Alexa can play my music, but I don't want her eavesdropping on, private conversations. Or sending my data somewhere without me knowing. Was that kind of the podcast's point too?
Totally. The more AI gets into our lives, the more we need to think about the data we're giving up. What's it being used for? It's not just about convenience. Our privacy is at stake here.
Okay, makes sense. And then the last risk was?
Accountability.
Right.
These AI systems can be so complex, it's hard to even tell who's responsible when something goes wrong.
So if an AI messes up, who takes the blame? It's a big question.
It is. Say there's an AI diagnosing patients, which that's happening already.
Yeah.
But if it makes a mistake and someone gets hurt, who's at fault?
That's a tough one.
Exactly. That's why people are saying we need ethical frameworks, guidelines,
So it's not being scared of AI, it's more like,
making sure we're using it responsibly.
yeah, we need those guardrails. So did this podcast offer any solutions? Like, how do we actually do ethical AI?
They did. They talked about 5 key principles: fairness, transparency, privacy, accountability, and safety.
Okay, a lot to unpack there. Let's start with fairness. What's that mean, practically?
Well, think about those algorithms that determine things like your credit score.
Yeah, big impact.
Fairness means those algorithms shouldn't discriminate against you for stuff you can't control,
Yeah.
like your background, things like that.
So everyone's got an equal chance.
You got it.
Yeah.
Then there's transparency. Let's say an AI denies your loan application. Wouldn't you want to know why?
I think we all would.
Exactly. Transparency means you have a right to know. What factors did they consider? Can you challenge any errors? It's about understanding how that decision was made.
Makes sense. I wouldn't want some generic rejection. I'd want the reasons. What about privacy? We talked about that with Alexa, but how does it fit into these principles?
It's simple, really. Ethical AI has to respect our privacy.
Right.
Our data needs to be handled responsibly. It's a balance. Using data to make our lives better, sure, but not at the cost of our basic right to privacy. So like your smart assistant, it should only record when it needs to and tell you what it's doing with that data. That ties right into accountability too, by the way. We need rules, Clear ones about who's responsible when AI systems screw up.
Companies, governments,
Whoever made the thing. But it has to be clear so we can actually hold them accountable. And then the final principle was...
Safety.
Right. And this means making sure AI is safe for everyone. Rigorous testing, careful design, always checking for risks. Think about self-driving cars.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one these days.
Huge. For those to work, they got to be safe for the people inside and everyone else on the road.
So they don't, run over pedestrians or cause accidents.
Exactly. We need to be sure they're making good decisions in all these complex situations. No room for error when lives are at stake.
So we've got our 5 principles, but how do we actually use them? It sounds good on paper, but the podcast mentioned some challenges too, right?
They did, and some are about the tech itself, some are more about us, the human in the equation.
Okay, so let's break down those challenges. What's the first one we need to tackle?
We've kind of danced around it already.
Yeah.
But bias in data.
Uh-oh, that again?
Yeah, it keeps coming up for a reason. AI systems learn from the data they get. So if that data is biased...
The AI will be biased too. We get it. It's a big deal.
It is. Because you can have the fanciest algorithms in the world, but if you train them on bad data, it's like baking a cake with rotten eggs. Doesn't matter how good your recipe is.
Love that analogy.
Right. Good intentions only get you so far if the ingredients are bad.
So even if we don't mean to be biased, the data itself could be.
Exactly. And it can happen in so many ways. Historical inequalities, cultural stuff, even those unconscious biases we all have. They creep into the data without us realizing. It's a huge problem to solve.
So how do we even start making sure this data is actually good, representative? What did the podcast suggest?
Great question, and one we'll get into more in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay, teasing us a bit there.
But for now, I think it's important to realize just how complex this challenge is. It's not a simple fix. It's about rethinking how we collect data, who's doing it, what we use it for.
Big changes, huh?
Big changes, but necessary if we want an AI future that's actually ethical. One that benefits everyone.
Well said. So we're at this crossroads, right? Amazing AI potential on one hand, but also these huge ethical challenges on the other. What now? What can we even do about it?
Well, that's where the ReThynk AI podcast got really interesting. They had some pretty practical solutions, and it wasn't just about, the tech experts fixing everything.
Okay, I like the sound of that. What did they suggest?
First up, education.
Wow.
Big time. We got to educate developers, businesses, everyone involved in AI about the ethical side of things.
So it's not enough to just build the cool tech.
Nope. It's got to be built responsibly.
Thinking about the impact it's going to have.
Exactly. Like, with great power comes great responsibility, right? That Spider-Man quote.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Well, we're giving AI crazy power so the people building it better understand the responsibility that comes with that.
Yeah, you can't just assume everyone's going to think about the ethics automatically. Got to be proactive. What else did they talk about?
Well, remember that whole lack of regulation thing? Big problem.
Yeah.
So, solution number 2, ethical guidelines, standards, clear ones.
Like rules for the AI road.
Exactly.
So is that industry best practices, codes of conduct, maybe even like laws?
All of the above, really.
Yeah.
We need that framework to keep AI development on track, make sure it's aligned with our values,
Yeah.
and that it's not going to cause harm.
Yeah, without those rules, it's like anything goes.
A Wild West.
Exactly. And nobody wants that, especially with something as powerful as AI. But what about bias in the data? We keep coming back to that. How do we fix that?
Solution number 3 tackles that head on. Diverse data. That's the key.
Meaning?
The data we use to train AI, it's got to be representative of everyone, not just a small group.
Makes sense.
If we only train AI on, say, data from one type of person, well, guess what? It's going to perpetuate those biases.
Ah, okay. So we got to actively fight against that.
We do. Got to look for those historical biases that might be hidden in data and make sure we're including data from everyone, underrepresented groups, everyone.
Yeah, that's a big challenge, but important. Got to make sure everyone's story is in there.
Absolutely. Which brings us to solution number 4. And this one's all about you.
Oh, okay. Now I'm listening. What can I do?
It's about awareness. User awareness.
Like me, the person using AI.
Exactly. The more people understand AI, how it works, the impacts it can have,
The more will demand that it's used ethically.
you got it. You don't need to be a coder, a scientist, any of that.
Thank goodness.
Right. But everyone can learn the basics. Form an opinion. How do you want AI to be used?
So be an informed citizen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We all have a say in this. It's not just some tech thing happening over there.
I like that. Makes me feel less powerless.
You are powerful. So those are our 4 solutions: education, guidelines, diverse data, and users like you being aware.
And they all work together, right?
They do. It's an ecosystem.
Yeah.
So, for example, better education for developers.
Leads to more transparent system.
You got it. Which then helps users understand what's going on, and they can demand more accountability.
It's like a cycle. A good one, hopefully.
Exactly. And the more people who join in.
The stronger it gets.
Exactly. So, for our listener, what does this all mean practically? What can they actually do right now?
It means they have power. Use your voice. Ask questions. Demand transparency.
From the companies using AI.
From everyone. And
Yeah.
support the companies who are doing it right.
The ones trying to be ethical. Yes. You can choose where you spend your money. Choose the good guys. And talk about it. Tell your friends, your family, everyone. The more people who know about this stuff.
The more chance we have of making real change.
Exactly. It's like a ripple effect. And here's the thing. Ethical AI.
It's not a one-and-done thing.
Nope. It's a journey. It's going to keep evolving as the tech evolves. So we got to stay informed. Keep asking those tough questions.
Can't get complacent.
Right. We can't assume someone else is handling this. It's on all of us.
To make sure AI is used for good. To benefit everyone.
You got it.
Yeah.
Now, this is something that really hit me while listening to the ReThynk AI podcast. They talked a lot about how AI reflects the biases in the data.
Yeah.
But what does that say about us? About humans?
Oh, interesting. Like, if AI is biased, it's because we're biased.
Exactly. So are we just going to keep repeating those same biases through AI?
Or can we actually use AI to, like, learn about ourselves?
Maybe even fix those biases.
Yeah.
That's the question.
That's a big one. And a good place to leave our listeners thinking. We'll be back for part 3 with more on how ethical AI is shaping our world.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We've talked about all the promises and perils of AI, the core principles of ethical development, and we even touched on some pretty inspiring ways it's being used for good.
And as we wrap up this deep dive into ethical AI, I keep thinking back to that idea of user awareness.
Yeah, it's easy to feel like, oh, this AI stuff, it's way over my head. Like, it's happening in some tech world that we have no control over.
But that's just not true.
Right. And that's what I loved about this whole conversation, realizing that we all actually do have a role to play in shaping this AI landscape.
We do.
Even if we're not, coding the algorithms ourselves.
Exactly.
So let's get practical. What can our listeners actually do to promote ethical AI?
First and foremost, get informed.
Okay.
Seriously, the more you understand about AI, how it works, the potential impact it can have, the better equipped you'll be to make good decisions.
About the AI systems you use.
But I'll admit, when I first started learning about AI, it was overwhelming. Like, do I need a computer science degree to even have an opinion?
You don't. Trust me, there are so many resources out there that explain AI in a way that, normal people can understand.
Okay.
Books, articles, podcasts, even online courses. Start with what interests you.
Like, what sparks your curiosity?
Exactly. Are you fascinated by self-driving cars? Great. Look into how those algorithms are developed and tested. Worried about AI in healthcare? Dive into the ethical considerations around patient data and consent.
So follow your interests.
And don't be afraid to ask questions. Nobody starts out as an expert. It's about starting that learning journey one step at a time.
I like that.
And then once you've got a grasp of the basics, start paying attention to the AI systems you encounter every day.
Oh, like the ones we don't even realize we're using.
Totally.
Give me an example.
Those personalized recommendations on Spotify, chat bots on websites, anything like that. Ask yourself, how is this thing using my data?
Yeah.
Am I okay with that? Are the decisions it's making fair? Are there consequences I'm not seeing?
Okay, yeah, that's a good point. We should be more critical.
We should. And if something feels off, if you're concerned about how an AI system is being used, speak up.
Don't just stay silent.
Nope. Contact the company, leave a review, talk about it on social media, make your voice heard.
So they know how we feel.
Exactly. Because consumer feedback, that's powerful, especially when it comes to ethical concerns. Companies care about their reputation. And if enough people raise concerns about their AI, they're more likely to listen and make changes.
I love that.
It's like that saying, be the change you want to see in the world. We don't have to just sit back and accept AI as it is.
We can help shape it.
We can.
Uh-huh.
And here's another thing you could do. Support the companies and organizations that are actually trying to do AI ethically.
Put your money where your mouth is.
Exactly. Choose to do business with companies that are transparent about their AI practices.
The ones that care about data privacy And using AI for good?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's about aligning your actions with your values.
I like that. And we can spread awareness too, right? Talk to our friends, family, colleagues about ethical AI. The more people who are informed.
The better. It's like a ripple effect. Your conversations spark more conversations.
And it could lead to some real change.
They could.
So it's not a one and done thing, this whole ethical AI thing.
It's a journey.
You've got to stay engaged, stay informed.
Absolutely.
You can't just check this box and say, okay, we did ethical AI, we're good.
Exactly.
It's got to be an ongoing conversation.
It does. Especially as AI keeps getting more advanced.
Right, because complacency can be dangerous. We can't just assume that, the experts are handling it. It's on all of us to make sure AI is being used in a way that truly benefits humanity.
It is. And now for our final thought.
Oh, love a good final thought.
We've talked a lot about how AI can reflect our biases. The biases in the data it's trained on.
Right, garbage in, garbage out.
Exactly. But what does that say about us? About society?
Ooh, good question.
If our AI systems are showing bias, it's because those biases already exist. Within us, within our data, within our system.
So it's like a mirror.
It is. And it makes you wonder, are we just doomed to repeat those same biases through AI? Or can we actually use AI as a tool to get better, to identify and challenge our own biases?
To create a more just and equitable world. That's the question I want our listeners to think about. Because in the end, ethical AI isn't just about building better technology, it's about building a better future for all of us. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into ethical AI. We hope it sparked some new insights and inspired you to be part of this crucial conversation.